Hello, good morning, good afternoon, dependent upon your time zone, and welcome to today's webinar. This is Amy Schwenk with Avature. You've joined hopefully you can see on screen, the Extending the Candidate Experience from Pre-Application to Onboarding. I am joined today by a couple of wonderful people. We have Elaine Orler with the Talent Board, who will be leading the majority of the discussion today with our panel. Our two wonderful panelists, we have Lisa Forrest with Alexander Mann, and we have Bennett Salmon with Deloitte. Thank you everyone for joining today, and to our panelists and to Elaine for leading. Again, my name is Amy Schwenk and I'm with Avature. One thing I want to call out as we start to have this discussion today is just reminding everybody that we do want this to be engaging. We do seek your questions. This is about you on the line. So please do use the question section of the webinar on the right-hand side in your panel. You'll type those questions in and we'll do our best to respond to all of them. Okay? A little bit about Avature. We're very proud to be sponsors of the Candidate Experience Awards. We have been for a number of years. We just have a tremendous passion around candidate experience and how that has really changed the industry in such a positive way in what we do as talent acquisition professionals and representing our business and the opportunities that we have for individuals that join us. A couple things about Avature. We really look at candidate experience through every single step of the hiring process, as we spoke to, and with the title of this webinar. It's from pre-application, that initial engagement, that first shoulder tap, all the way through to getting that person on board and doing the role that they're so very excited to do within our organization. Avature is a recruitment technology platform. Really actually extends beyond recruitment into talent management. As you see here, these two bullet points, it's a highly configurable enterprise SaaS platform for talent acquisition and talent management. Truly allows you to run your talent acquisition and talent management business within your organization the way that you need to, with that candidate, with that prospect in mind. And you have the opportunity to really deliver that modern online experience, boosting that candidate engagement. With Avature, you have agility, you have mobility, you have the complete freedom to run your, as I mentioned before, your business the way you need to engage that talent in the way that you need to get the right people in your organization at the right time. And with that, I will turn it over to Elaine to begin our panel.
Well, thank you so much, Amy, and I'm looking forward to this webinar and actually, more importantly, doing the least amount of talking, as we have some amazing panelists that are going to be sharing their stories throughout. And before we dive right into that, I do want to take a brief second just to educate everybody on who the Talent Board is and why Avature is a sponsor of ours. We were founded in 2011, and the essence of the Talent Board as a whole was to create an environment where organizations would compete to create a positive candidate experience. And many of us who have been around for a few years and a few gray hairs starting to show know that candidate experience has often been the last aspect of many organizations' needs and focus. And what we've seen is the rise of the fact that the job seeker really is in the driving seat, and the importance of creating quality relationships with candidates as we go forward. So the research data that we bring, the competition that we bring for the winner status, and that ability to help organizations benchmark their own practices against others is what we're here for as a nonprofit. And again, we wouldn't be successful as a nonprofit if it wasn't for all of our sponsors and their contribution, and especially Avature. You guys have been around since the beginning and have watched us go through this journey. For those of you on the call that aren't aware of the process, the reality is for the CandE Awards, it's really a three-step process. It starts with an employer's need to do a self-assessment. So there's an exhaustive amount of questions that you'll be asked to complete. The second round is surveying your candidates. It's our survey tools and survey questions, but you distribute to your candidates, and then we look at the survey scores, the candidate-specific scores, much like a customer survey. This is specific just for the candidates that are your audience. And then from there, we're selecting which companies are winners based on a positive candidate experience and about 13 dimensions, and the reality is I probably need to write the dissertation book on how we created the formula to figure out what we call the CE2, which is the Candidate Experience Score Squared. Round 3 are conversations with each of the employers around what they're doing that's differentiating, and those become our storyteller winners and some of the best practice content that gets published throughout the year. So that is fast and furious because, again, maybe not everybody knows who we are. You can find us at thetalentboard.org or just do any kind of search on Candidate Experience Awards, and you can find out more details. This past year, it was completely complimentary for companies to compete, and we're looking at how we're going to structure for next year, but coming off the heels of an amazing gala reception and recognizing the winners this year and the number of candidates that responded. In fact, let me just get into that. We just started to pull together our global data, and this is brand new to everybody, so this is the first we're publishing. But from a global perspective, our North America, we had 242 companies that initially competed. We had 183,000 candidate responses, and we recognized 50 winners. All of this just completed back in the end of November. And as we move to our EMEA and APAC programs, which are now closed in candidate collection, we're moving into the winner analysis. But globally, we had over 220,000 candidate surveys completed this year, which is up about 80,000 over last year. The interesting thing this year is the number of countries where we asked candidates, where do you reside, or where are you applying for jobs? And what you can see across this is specifically we had candidate responses from every one of the highlighted countries this year. And we're now digging in deeper to, where we have the greatest amount of penetration from candidate responses and where those job opportunities are. But the reality is we're going to have data for data's sake, for data forever. So incredibly excited about what we have to share, but more importantly, want to share who the 2016 North America winners are. These organizations were just recognized last month for their position in winning, and in order to make this list, they had to meet a variety of criteria. They had to have the largest population of their candidate audience being candidates that were not considered not considered for the position, so those that were deselected out. We also looked at data specific to the candidates' overall score of those that weren't selected versus those that were. We also looked at evaluation data on each of the stages from an overall, from a likely to refer, and from a likely to apply again. And all of those things factored into these organizations having the highest overall scores for the competition and winning on their merits alone with the way they treat their candidates. Which gets me to why I am so excited about our panelists. And the two panelists that we have today are specifically from two of the organizations that have won, and not just one this year, have won multiple years and in different regions. So when I showed the slide before about our global reach, we really have 3 regional programs, the North America program, the EMEA program, and the APAC program. What you also saw on that slide was we colored in Latin America and South America because we had candidates responding, but into those other 3 survey formulas. So the organizations today with Alexander Mann and with Deloitte, both organizations have been very competitive in the way they treat their candidates, and I think you're going to appreciate some of the things that they have to share and what they're doing different, where they are in their journey, and what they're going to be doing next in order to really help you solidify what you might be wanting to accomplish in 2017 as we go forward. So I said I was going to do the least amount of talking, and now I'm going to commit to that. I would love to introduce Lisa. And Lisa, I'd love for you to take a second to tell everybody hello and who you are, a little bit about yourself and Alexander Mann.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much, Elaine and Amy. I am Lisa Forrest. It's great to be here. We're great partners with the CandEs Experience Awards, and I'm not ashamed to admit that we're very proud to have won in all 3 regions. Very excited to hear the results of the other 2 regions coming up this year. Alexander Mann Solutions are, for those that don't know us, are a talent acquisition and talent management firm. So I suppose the thing that's different for us is that a lot of the firms that you see having won awards are companies that we partner with and have helped them along the road with getting their awards, which is a fantastic thing to be involved with as well. but this award for us is about what we do for ourselves. So it is our core business, so you'd hope that we knew what we were doing, but it's really good to be talking to you today about some of the stuff that we have done. Personally, I've been in the industry for about 20 years, in the talent acquisition industry, of which about 15 years have been recruitment process outsourcing and the last 6.5 with Alexander Mann Solutions. So I look forward to telling you a few of our stories later. But back to you, Elaine.
Well, thank you, Lisa. And we'll also say that since we've both been in the industry about 20 years, we both started when we were 5. So people can do the math on how old we are. I love that. Well, Bennett, I'd love to turn it over to you to share a little bit about yourself and Deloitte.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Bennett Salmon. I've been at Deloitte for about 11 years, but came with 5 years of experience prior to my role at Deloitte. I work within our Evolving Workforce group, and Evolving Workforce at Deloitte includes our acquisition team, alumni, global mobility, and transition assistance. So more broadly, about 500 professionals within our organization. And my role focuses specifically on special projects within acquisition. To put it in perspective a little bit for those of you that may not be as familiar with Deloitte, from a size and scale reference, we're the largest professional services firm. We deliver audit, advisory, tax, and consulting services to 80% of the Fortune 500. This year, we'll hire more than 26,000 people for our U.S. offices. So from a scale and scope, that should give you a sense of the type of work that we do at Deloitte and some of the projects that I may work on.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Bennett. And we're not quite the same in age, so we'll just call ourselves sisters of other parents at one point in time. And we're going to dive right in, everybody. We've got a lot to talk about, and as Amy mentioned, really going through the full life cycle of recruitment technology, but recruitment life cycle in general, the CandE data and the CandE research work that we do, and the questions that are asked of the candidates through the surveys also follow that same type of approach. So we're very focused on ensuring that there is a mirrored image of employers describing what they're accomplishing, what are they doing within each of these major stages, from attraction to application management, finalist selection, and no interest, as well as what the candidates feel they are within each of these stages. So what are they doing from a research and marketing perspective related to the job, how they're going through the application, what they feel about screening and interview, what their impressions are of the offer in the new hire process or onboarding, and then those candidates that aren't selected, where are they at in the process. And so what we try to do in the question sets, and as we look at the evolution of, again, the survey and the benchmark data, there's a continued mirrored image. So as an employer might respond to what they're doing from a candidate attraction perspective, we're looking at the candidate's reaction and or their impression of those same type of activities around example, research, and marketing. So I wanted to take the questions and the way that we're going to drive the conversation going forward in these same kind of activities and these same kind of models. So we're going to start with talent attraction and sourcing and really what's happening from the front end of the equation. And some of the data that we'll present as I look at the CandE data research, this is all brand new data from the 2016 research. All of this is based on the North America responses, which is about 183,000 candidate responses. Each of these scores and formulas are coming from that base data set, and we'll have more of this information being published in our research reports coming up in the next couple of weeks and early into January. But one thing I want to kick the conversation off with on the research side is from the candidate perspective. We asked the candidates specifically, do they feel like they have a relationship with the company or not? The answer to this first question when they began the process, 44% of the candidates said they had no relationship. And while that seems high, what the reality is, we're really looking at the reverse side of this, which is saying that 60, if I could do my math, 56%, sorry, see I can't do math, 56% of the candidates already feel they have a relationship with the organization. So they've already done some research. They know somebody that's in the company. They feel that they have friends there. They are a customer. And I think as we look at what we're doing with talent attraction, this is a balancing act that all organizations need to balance. On the same side, we also have what candidates felt was most valuable when they researched career opportunities. Not surprising, this was a select all, so these are the percentage times in which they were selected. Company career site is right at the top. What we found in our research data is that we're seeing, online groups like LinkedIn, Yahoo, Google others, these other community type models coming up higher in the overall equation, and as well employer reviews like Glassdoor. So with each of these different types of things starting to impact the way the candidate researches our organization, I thought I'd dive straight into some of our questions for our panelists. And we know that attraction takes on several different channels, from universities to interns to seasonal hires, entry-level professional, you name it, right? How are you adjusting your content and communication and attraction efforts for different audiences? And Lisa, I'd love it if you would dive into this one first. I know you guys have a broad spectrum of candidates you need to recruit.
Sure. Yes, sure. Thanks, Elaine. So I think, like all companies, we recognize that different channels reach different audiences in different ways at different times. Social media is certainly not a revolutionary channel, and if I was going to talk about that, I guess people would be surprised as being a revolutionary thing to do. But I think using channels, particularly social channels, in smarter ways can be revolutionary. And we very much, and it's very much my personal belief, is that the differentiator is authenticity. And I think what we're finding is content which feels very glossy and manufactured and very corporate. It doesn't engage with an audience in the same way that it used to. We recently ran a campaign with students that were in their final year of college and looking to work flexibly around their studies, just as an example, so that real entry level. They had no knowledge of our industry at all, about talent acquisition industry. And with no knowledge of it and putting it in 100% on Facebook, running a campaign totally on Facebook, the network of interest grew itself exponentially each day that we had it open. It was really important. I think it's really important to use authentic homemade footage, and when I say homemade, I don't mean that it looks shoddy, but I think it's really important that it feels like what it's like to work there. Simple and concise language, making sure you don't use too much jargon to describe what you're asking people to do. We also, and we do this a lot, we always partner with somebody. So we partnered with one of our students this time to help guide us about what content they want to see and hear. It was really important we had that audience input. So I do think...
Sorry, go ahead, Lisa. Yo, keep going. This is great.
Yes, but what I was going to say was I think we shouldn't assume that only applies to the junior end. I think looking at executive hires, we're seeing more and more trends towards authenticity being key.
Excellent, excellent. And Bennett, I think even you have some stories around this as well. I could almost, and I'm going to put you on the spot, but even the concept of your titles versus what makes sense internally versus externally. But how are you guys making a difference in how you're attracting candidates?
Yeah, I think Lisa took a lot of words right out of my mouth as well when she talks about, authenticity, especially through social media. I think, like a lot of organizations, we have recruiters that focus on each individual type of hire. So whether it's an intern, a campus full-time candidate, an experienced hire, or even at that executive level, our recruiters focus on each of those audiences. So you can obviously see how, from that perspective alone, we're able to really hone in on the different styles. But, one of the things that I think we're really good at and trying to be even more comfortable with is connecting with candidates and encouraging our recruiters to get out of their comfort zone and try new things. So to Lisa's point, really engaging on social media. We've started to do some more with live social media through Facebook and Instagram, and really trying to build those authentic relationships and increase engagement. So are our candidates responding to what they're seeing on social media? Are they sharing? Is there that interaction with the recruiters and the candidates on social media versus just pushing out information that has very limited engagement, on the back end? And then, other things that we're trying to do just to adapt to the different audiences and make it more personal is, one example is we just launched a new video email tool, which is actually really cool because it brings an email to life so the candidates can really see who that recruiter is behind that email. A couple other things that we've done to really attract different audiences. On our careers site, we provide a lot of information that's dedicated to the different audiences. We have career journeys that are relevant really to any candidate. And we recently launched what's called Explore Your Fit, which is a tool to help our campus candidates learn about our business areas and determine what may be a good fit for them based on their interests and experience levels. And we're now building a similar tool for experienced hire as well. Deloitte is such a large organization that it can be very confusing to candidates to understand, okay, where do I fit in this complex organization? And so from a recruiting perspective, we really try to bring that to the candidate so that we can attract them on, all different levels, regardless if they're campus or experienced hire.
Oh, thank you so much. And I will tell you, as I was listening to both of you, there's a couple of keywords that came out that just solidified in my mind. And the fact that both of you, and again, authentic is the terminology, if that would be the 2017 theme of all themes, organizations really, taking that step forward. Because I remember when it was a risk to put a realistic job description out on the webpage. We always had to use the comp description and nothing made sense. But now moving towards relevant content, real content about what people's lives are really like working in the job is what candidates are looking for as well. But I also heard from both of you too, it's moving even the internal resources out of their comfort zone, perhaps putting recruiter names on response emails today, allowing recruiters' names to be published on the website, oh no, Lord forbid, and these kinds of things, but also moving quickly, and both of you guys are stellar at this, experimenting with different things. Not everything will work for everybody. And from what is effective for your organization, experimentation, the willing to try. If it doesn't work, pick up your bootstraps, move on to the next one, and until you continue to find what's going to be the most successful. So excellent, excellent feedback, which takes us into the next phase, which I know from a candidate perspective can be one of the most challenging aspects of their experience with organizations. And we have more data than I will ever have anything to do with over 5 years of candidates' frustration specifically around the application process. And one of the key points that we have from this year's data, and as we look at this trend year over year, the candidates' time, the time it takes for them to apply. And what this slide is showing, and just quickly, is I segmented the overall scores, and I said candidates that said that they had a positive or extremely positive, so a 4 or a 5-star rating, how long did it take them to apply, versus candidates that said they had a 1 or a 2-star rating, and how long did it take them to apply. And while you can see a couple of minor differences in here between the green and the red, the blue is the overall number in the middle. What you do see is time to apply isn't creating as big a differentiation between a positive and negative experience as most would assume. Candidates, that said they took 15 minutes to an hour still had the strongest markers in positive experience. What we found the difference being is if they felt that that time was valuable in how they presented their skills and abilities. So this really drived into the data that said they'll spend the time if they feel the time is valuable for what they're trying to accomplish, and when they're trying to accomplish that information. So I'd love to bring over the question to you guys is, applying for a position we know is exhaustive for them. From needing to have their resume to go, to answering the pre-screening questions, to filling out all of our forms. What steps are you using to measure your application process and adjust for your candidates? And Benedict, I'm going to give you a chance to start first on this one.
Okay, thank you. I think looking at that slide, I realize where Deloitte falls. We're right within 45 to 60 minutes for a candidate to complete the application. And when I think back to when I was at the Recruiting Trends conference a couple of weeks ago, one of the speakers said, 10 minutes is too long for a candidate to complete an application. So at Deloitte, I think we have a lot of work to do in this area. Right now, like I said, it takes between 45 minutes to 60 minutes to complete our online application. And what we have found is that we're asking information that may not be necessary right at that initial expression of interest. And we also, evaluate our application and understand that we're lacking some of the industry standard apply functionalities. So resume parsing, profile imports from, social pages, and mobile capabilities. So we've recently launched a project team where we're going to dissect our application process, remove the questions that aren't necessary at time of expressing interest, and also build in some of those industry standard functionality to help with the candidate experience. Right now we're looking at it from an experienced hire perspective, but I'm sure that we'll also look at it from a campus perspective as well. And obviously, the future state, once we're done with all of this, we'll have a shorter, more candidate-centric profile submission process. We'll have, a lot of, high-tech functionality, and we'll reduce the number of times that we're asking redundant information, because we know that, we're doing that as well in some situations.
Well,
so
and
we
Bennett,
have some work to do.
Yeah, well, you know what, and absolutely appreciate your honesty, as I'm sure everybody else on this call is listening in, and the webinar, is the fact that you guys are multi-year global winners, but you're not afraid to say there's areas that you have specific things you want to work on, and definitely some of those key points. I don't know if 10 minutes is the answer. You and I, we could all debate that from who said it at the last conference, but I do think whatever is right for your candidates, for them to submit whatever's right for you and what you need in order to make a decision for them quickly. And Lisa, you'd like to expand on this as well, I presume.
Well, yeah, and I think we're right at the other end of the spectrum, not in terms of needing to do more. We could always improve on this, and I think we've got lots more to do as well. But, Deloitte hires 26,000 people. We hire 1,500 a year, so I appreciate my challenge is probably a little smaller in this space. We run an innovation summit called Catalyst, and last year, actually, in 2015, I attended, and we were talking about application processes. People were getting really involved in that, how long it should be. That became a real topic. And I took a challenge of having it in under 90 seconds. I don't know if that was someone daring me to do that, but we did it. And actually what we did is, in order to personalize it and have it as simple as possible, we were asking people how to contact them, when or how they wanted to be contacted, and some very basic information about what their interests are. And then we did the rest of the legwork. Now, I appreciate with 26,000 hires for multiple geographies and multiple roles, that's not always possible. And maybe in a little while later on this webinar, when we start to talk about maybe some innovation, I can talk to you a bit more about some ways of getting around that. But for us, it was about having a personalized approach. I always look at things as though I am a consumer. And I don't know about everybody else, but under 5 minutes, if I'm on any kind of website, I will stick with 5 to 15 minutes, and I'm already bored. I'm done, and I don't want to log in and choose the password 17 times. So I think we need to find a way of gathering the right information that's practical for our organization, and balance that with having a really personalized and simple service to candidates, so that they feel they don't drop off. And I think it's difficult. That experience has such a strong link to brand engagement. So it's an interesting one. I don't think we can have the same for all kinds of companies.
Oh, and excellent point to both of you guys. And as I summarize, I think it's right information at the right time. And that was, still goes back to the candidates will give you the time necessary if they feel the time is valuable, if the questions you're asking are related to the job and the content. And for the one-click apply, and that ability to at least throw my name in the hat, in the ring, and then you take it on from there. Anything where that experience is correlated to what the expectations are of the job. We find the candidate scores go rapidly to the positive. And I appreciate anybody on this call and any other organizations listening. One thing I know the two on this call are already doing with their innovation and just really rethinking. I call it deconstruct. Take your current process and throw it out and say, if you could never do any of that again, what could you do otherwise? And I always encourage every organization, at the minimum quarterly, but probably monthly, take a walk in your candidate shoes, apply to your own job, go through the experience. Secret shop your own recruiting experience, and you'll create your own master list of things that should be readdressed for the next year very quickly. And the last thought is that the candidates, and you both commented on it, the candidates prefer and need communication. They want to know where they are in the process. They want to know what's happening. So the faster that you can make those distinctions and determinations based on the information they've given you, the sooner they know if they're going to be considered, or the sooner they know if they should be applying to another job or looking at another organization. All valuable. which gets us to now you've got the candidates that you're most interested in, and you're ready to, from a recruiting perspective, we've got to push forward with the evaluation on the candidates. And we have some more data from this year's research. And I know there was a couple of questions that have come up around access to the slides, the research data, and I believe Avature will be making all of this available. We can make the slide content also available in PDF or download format, or reach back out to Avature for it. We'll also be publishing these research reports and the data analysis in our CandE research that comes out the 1st of January. But a couple of things from the candidate side, again, on the application process and the interview, specifically the interviewing and the screening process. We asked them what types of interviews that they went through, and to select all that they did. Phone interviews were the top. Most candidates had been through some form of phone interviews, and then any number of these other variable types of interview processes that we now know exist. On top of that, we asked the candidates what represented their experience the most, and when it came to notifications and responses. And those that had a positive experience, we really saw that 34% of them received an explanation from the recruiter on what to expect. 33% of them said they received an explanation from the hiring manager on what to expect. And this really moves us into, what's happening from that interview step and those interview phases. And I'd love to take the conversation with both of you into what you're doing from an interview and screening perspective. And specifically, Lisa, if you can talk a little bit more about what you guys are doing around phone interviews, the conversational piece. What's been the most accessible with your candidate experience?
Well, in looking at all kinds of interviews, they can all be effective in their own right. And we've seen some really great developments in the last couple of years in video interviewing, and that's really great to see. The thing I think always with video interviewing is that there's also a level of comfort that we have to have, that people want to be seen on camera, and certainly in some geographies people still struggle with that. So I think phone interviews and having really rich phone interviews has become really important. We have a process by where we give people tips on what they need to do while they're having a phone interview ahead of talking to us. Everything from the research they need to do, the environment they need to be in, and even how they need to treat it as though they are face-to-face, even when they're not. Clear, concise questioning and answering is really, really important. But when it comes to candidate experience, which is what we're talking about, I don't think there is a substitute for face-to-face interviews. I think not just the interview itself, but I think absorbing a company's culture, engaging with the brand, feeling what it is like to be greeted, to be in the environment. Does it feel inclusive? Do the values come to life? What does it truly feel like to work here? As technology gets better and develops further, and I'd really like that candidate experience to be possible through video and augmented reality, but I think for now, for me, it's still the in-person interview that wins.
Yep, the human element of it, the face-to-face, the greet, the I see your eyes, and I agree with you. I think video interviewing is definitely moving into a path to definitely help with some of the costs associated with just the screening and the selection process, but the final decision, that ability to walk the halls, to see where you might work, there's a lot of value in that. And I know that, Bennett, shifting gears a little bit on the interview aspect, on even just surveying your candidates on what experience is most valuable to them, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, so this is a good question because we're kind of shifting the way that we've done things in the past. So historically, we've surveyed all candidates who receive offers, and what we have found is the feedback from this group is largely positive. I mean, they obviously had a good experience. They're joining Deloitte, but we also recognize that we're missing a big pool of candidates who may be able to provide the most valuable feedback, and those are the people that did not receive offers. So over the last couple of months, we've launched a new candidate experience survey, and the survey will now go to anyone who had at least the first round interview. So we're hoping that this, gives us a more holistic picture to share with our business clients as well as our acquisition leadership team. Once we have the results, typically what we'll do is we'll analyze them, pull out some key stats, and we'll share those with our recruiting leaders as well as our business leadership. And then we encourage our leadership team to use this information to help influence behaviors, to recognize team members, because a lot of times when candidates are completing a survey, they'll say, my recruiter, Bennett Salmon was X, Y, and Z. And a lot of times our recruiters don't see that feedback, so it's really helpful to call it out and provide some recognition. And also, we use that information to evaluate our overall candidate experience, our internal process, kind of the whole gamut of start to finish candidate experience process. So we're kind of in this shift of only looking at those that received offers to now opening up that candidate pool pretty largely. So we're excited about that, and we think that that's something that's definitely going to help drive the behaviors and mindsets that we need our recruiters to kind of get in balance over the next fiscal year.
And both of you guys have excellent feedback overall from the event itself and how it's prepared, whether the candidates are prepared, whether everybody is prepared for whether it's video or in person, directly to now measuring how was that experience overall and what to expect in those pieces. So again, valuable. We found an additional winner data. I think the most important piece to the candidates really was preparing them. Knowing what to do. They're going to do a lot of their own homework. It's amazing. The candidates will do all the research necessary to get to know who and understand who they're going to be interviewing with. But anything we can do to set them up for success versus hoping they fail has been a huge differentiator. And whether the candidate ends up wanting to reapply, or even if they aren't selected, being willing to refer others, which is incredibly necessary in our recruiting efforts today. As we continue to move along, we're rounding the curve on offer and new hire, and now we've got, and as you were talking, Bennett, these are the candidates you've already surveyed. They know they're already in a slight degree of honeymoon excitement because of accepting the offer, but there's a lot more activities and tasking that has to happen during this phase. And a couple of things, just again, from the overall data, we asked candidates what's happening at the stage of offer, what's happening prior to their start date. And the key things that come up are, again, those additional verifications, additional forms, drug testing, all of those activities that now have to happen to finalize that experience. Not to mention, if they did accept the offer, all of the onboarding activities that need to be completed. So more forms, more paperwork, more activities from those perspectives. But when we think about that, there's a lot of transactions, a lot of work that has to get done. And Bennett, I'd love if you would want to share, we know that they have a lot of contacts and candidates are dealing with their recruiter, the coordinator, the managers. How are you guys managing the responsibility of candidate experience?
Yeah, so we, when we're looking at the candidate experience, as you mentioned, the candidates touch a lot of people, our coordinators, our recruiters, our hiring managers, our client service professionals. We also have a team of onboarding specialists that help once they receive an offer. And so we're very specific around what that process looks like. But in terms of the candidate experience, I would say everyone is responsible for the candidate experience, and I think for us, and maybe some of you can relate to this as well, sometimes it can be challenging to put the candidate lens on every communication, every interaction that we have. But we're really trying to provide a consistent candidate experience to all of our candidates, whether they end up at Deloitte or not. So I think one of the things that we implemented more recently was that onboarding specialist, and the role of that individual is to ensure a smooth onboarding experience when an offer has been accepted. And it really helps the recruiter focus on recruiting new talent, but it also provides that candidate with an expert resource to help them through all of the paperwork, the background investigation, everything that happens once an offer is accepted, which we know can be very cumbersome, and sometimes it can be a little bit confusing for candidates as well when they're trying to wrap up their current role and make that transition to a new organization.
That concierge level service to get them to the final, get them through the door.
Absolutely, and one thing that we're trying this year, which is a little bit different, is through our goal setting process, recruiters are responsible for writing goals around the candidate experience. So it's always been something that we've pushed, but this year we're really taking more ownership of that and requiring recruiters to write some goals about it, include it in their scorecard, how to provide that high-touch candidate experience, and put the needs of the candidate first, our process second. So we're definitely honing in on that.
Well, that's exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing how that measures out next year then as you guys put that into play. And, you know, Lisa, I know that you guys are really committed to assimilating your candidates through the onboarding process. What are you most excited about?
Well, I think definitely mirroring some of the comments that you made, Bennett. We've also been looking at having an individual to help support them through their onboarding process, which can be painful. We all know that. All the kind of detail gathering and background screening, so I'm absolutely with you on the importance of that. I mean, simple things like once you make me an offer, get me my paperwork on time, quickly. If you don't, that doesn't make me feel particularly wanted and like you value hiring me. So I think that's been one of the things we've learned from our surveying. But I think one of the other kind of words that springs to mind when I think of the experience of onboarding is consistency. It's all well and good having a candidate that comes to an experience that's really, really positive, but when they sit next to somebody else whose was really negative, when they join, that can be equally damaging. So I think real consistency and clarity. Induction is a term very easily bandied about, but an inclusive induction that makes me feel just as engaged and with relevant content if I am the receptionist or I'm on the board. You know, I think all of those things need to be taken into account. Some of the exciting things that we've done more recently is social media forums for new joiners so that they can join forums ahead of joining. We're just about to roll out a technology-supported onboarding process, which is mobile-enabled, which is super exciting for us because we're quite small and those kind of innovations are really exciting. But I think, and Ben, again, you touched on this, it's about it feeling personalized. In so much of this, we talk about what it feels like, and you're right in saying that it's difficult to think of the candidate's experience at every single point of every single process. But if we personalize it as much as we can, if we invest in making people feel like we value them, then as they join, it will feel like a valuable and great experience.
And to tie right into that, and the importance of that isn't just to make them feel good, it's performance and productivity and their ability to really absorb into the organization and start to make an impact overall, which is, you know, what we're all driving for. So that concierge level, taking care to make sure that they can get through to these steps. But I also love the fact that you're taking on technology and some other innovation things to really improve so that people can get into that new job, that excitement carries over and they're moving forward. I can tell you that I think the one thing I hear the most on the onboarding process, which is the easiest one for every organization to fix, yet the one that's always there, is the candidate that accepts the offer, that it's excited to start, shows up to work on the first day, and then starts to get the emails saying that they're not being considered because they were attached to other requisitions. There's such an interesting play on when we communicate to our candidates that they've not been selected, but yet they already are hired. And to this day, I saved a letter that a candidate received of a rejection after they had already started, just as a proof point of there's a way in which we need to think through the information we have, the content we have, and the way that we're treating them from beginning to end, and with the technology that we have. But I'm excited about what you guys are having, what you're doing with bringing in your candidates, but driving that to the last stage that we really have in the process, which isn't linear, but it is those candidates then that we need to say thanks but no thanks to. And oftentimes the largest audience, right? We can't hire everybody that's applied. Work with organizations that get 1 million applicants a year but only hire 10,000 positions. You got to tell 990,000 people that you may be good enough to be a customer or a friend. You might have friends and family here. You might even be an advocate, but you're not eligible for a position, is a delicate story that you have to share. And when we found in the research data is we looked for one of the key differences in what candidates, in the way in which they were transitioned as part of their disposition, was if they were encouraged to apply again for a similar another job. So when we're telling the candidates thanks but no thanks, but giving them a call to action, the candidates that said that they had a positive experience, again those 4 and 5 stars, were 3 times more likely to be encouraged to apply to another position than the candidates that had a negative experience. And so when you think about it from this perspective, the reality is that it comes back to that communication, that message, that conversation that we're having with them around how they're being, I don't want to say declined, but it's declined in their overall process, right? So I'd love for Lisa, maybe you could start with a response on this one, but when you think about how you're managing the candidates that might have been a good fit for the organization, but maybe not for that specific position. So these might be your silver medalists and et cetera. What are you doing, or how are you managing your communication and relationships with them to keep them warm for potential future?
So that's a really good question. We all know that a no to a candidate right now, could be the person that ends up being a client, a stakeholder somewhere else. I often think about what if they turn up to be your father-in-law. You never know who you're saying no to. But absolutely to combat this, last year we launched something called the Talent Hub. So that, and what it is a proactive ahead of demand talent pooling function. So it focuses on non-hired talent, and in those talent pools there is really it includes internal talent that's looking for roles, external talent that we pipeline for roles, but it also has this very valuable, engaged source of candidates that are silver medalists. And our relationship with some of these candidates runs for months and years, regardless of our ability to hire them into a role today. And I think those runners-up, those be them runners-up or referred candidates people engage with, we know they're a true culture and value match to our organisation because they got that close. So what we do is we have a kind of framework whereby we communicate with them in forums, sharing thought leadership articles. We do it from leadership downwards, so it's not just kind of corporate messages out, but there are individuals that take responsibility, advocates, if you will, in our organisation that take responsibility for communicating with various pools of talent. That targeted content and communication is really important. I don't want to see everything from you as an organisation, but I do want to find things that are going to continue to engage me.
Yeah.
But one thing we also commit to, and actually I think this has been a differentiator for us, is that when we say no, we don't sugarcoat the reasons why not. I think we try to be very honest and brave about the feedback, and we make sure that that's really transparent to the candidate so that nobody is in any kind of misconception as to why it hasn't worked out for this one, but we've had an honest conversation about what could be right in the future. And I think that's really important.
Absolutely, absolutely, and probably one of the reasons why you guys are a multi-year winner is because candidates, if there is a true differentiation, it is the candidates that are being told or given information as to why not them. And the quote I used from one of our speakers last year is, my application was rejected without me being rejected as a person. And so, that is the balancing act of what we have to do when we say thanks but no thanks, is reject them for the position without rejecting them as a person. And Bennett, I know you guys are doing a lot around this as well.
Yeah, so I can relate to a lot of what Lisa said. One of the things that we're experimenting with this year is finding a fit for those silver medalist candidates. Right now, if a candidate is not a good fit for one requisition, a lot of times they have to start from scratch and go through the entire process if they're interested in another requisition. So we're trying to bridge that gap and really focusing on experimenting in that arena. I think it's a little crazy when I think about it, but being such a large organization, recruiters may not know who the right recruiter is from a different business in order to send that top candidate or silver medalist, and look at them for different opportunities. So we're trying to build resources through technology to really help foster an environment where it's easy to share candidates, and we're also identifying opportunities to help recruiters build their internal network and ultimately find an opportunity for those silver medalist candidates. And similar to what Lisa was talking about with the Talent Hub, we have talent communities which are probably pretty similar. So if a candidate isn't the right fit, and maybe they aren't the right fit right now, or maybe just flat out may not be the right fit in general, those individuals can join the talent communities and continue to build relationship and stay in touch with Deloitte. They may be in a position to look for a new opportunity down the road, and this helps us, stay engaged with some of those candidates as well. So talent communities are definitely something that we leverage in-house as well, but really helping our recruiters build their internal networks and identifying different technologies to make it easier to share those silver medalist candidates. So, there's a lot that we're prioritizing within that area.
And excellent. And again, the communication to the candidates if they're not selected, but the fact that you're giving them other avenues to maintain relationships or to even be continually pursued, especially those silver medalists, as we think about may not have been right job, but good cultural fit, just next job, next line. And how do we make those things happen? Because there's already such a huge investment. I mean, we can have a whole webinar on that alone, on the candidate's investment in the organization and the organization's already investment in pre-screening and qualifying, et cetera. How can we make that investment mature? It just may not mature for that single position. And that's what you guys are solving for as you go forward. We are rounding the corner on the time, and so I want to go straight into really what my favorite question is of all times, because this is the one that I hold on to. But when you guys think about everything you've accomplished thus far with your organizations, one thing I do know about the multi-year winners is no organization has ever stood up and said they've arrived. Everybody feels that there's something else that they have to work on, something else that they're continuing to focus on to bring their organization forward. So I'd love for each of you to share, a peek into what are you focused on for 2017? What is on your positive candidate experience journey? And maybe Bennett, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I would just say, two things that I've touched on. One is that recruiter scorecard. So starting to measure our recruiters on the candidate experience. Again, putting the candidate first, process second. I would say that's a huge push for FY7. And then the other piece that I just talked about was identifying opportunities for those silver medalist candidates. And what we've called that project is total talent recall. So, being able to find homes and opportunities for those individuals if they're not a right fit for maybe that first position that they applied for. So I would say those are two of the biggest things that we have going on within FY17 outside of looking at process in general, which, we're always trying to do to stay, on top of the curve.
That's great. Total talent recall.
I love that.
That is
sounds
cool.
like a film.
The movie, the credits start on.
I want to see that movie.
That's great. Lisa, what's on 2017's horizon for you?
Oh gosh, well, I could go on for about 2 hours just on innovation because it's what gets me out of bed in the morning. But I think let me just talk about a couple of things that we've got planned for 2017 that I'm super excited about. So one of the things that we're piloting is a new feedback gathering tool, and actually, Bennett, but very much similar to what you're talking about. And it's actually a brand new tool that works on a kind of NPS concept and takes its lead from the consumer world. It's a 2-question survey that you can trigger at any point of the candidate journey, and you can do it multiple times. And the 2 questions are a rating of the experience and an option to elaborate. What it does is it pulls that information in real time so that we can mold that experience as the candidate's going through it. It measures that real deep level sentiment concerns, issues that it sees, and feeds them back. So that's really exciting to me because it's kind of the next stage of gathering feedback on candidate experience. I'm really excited about that one. And then another one, which I roll my eyes as I say it because it's the word robots, and no one was more skeptical than me on hearing about robots playing a part in the world of recruiting. But having seen the pilot that we're building for 2017, it feels very real. The first foray into robotics, lots of people are doing already, which is interview scheduling, which is really like a sophisticated version of booking a restaurant table online, and that doesn't feel very innovative. But the really exciting piece for me is how we use it to screen candidates, and the latest bot that we are about to pilot uses intelligent natural language processing. So it learns questions and answers and it responds in real time. It has like a library, and the more you tell it and the more you ask it, it learns and adds to its library. And it has like a two-way chat function, and that again can go all points through the candidate journey. The thing for me on this is one of the problems we have in personalization is we don't have time, and this is an automated way to personalize for people to feel they can talk to someone. So there's loads more, but they're two of my most exciting ones.
And those couldn't be any more on the edge of innovation. If we had asked you to go all the way out to the edge of the frontier and hang your foot over there. So very excited for both of your organizations and what you guys are going to be accomplishing, and looking forward to your results next year should you decide to compete for the awards again, which any organization that doesn't win remains anonymous. Therefore, I'm not even allowed to say whether companies compete or not. I only get to talk to the winners on a regular basis. I do know we are at time, and there was one question that did come in on the question that I thought maybe you guys could answer in a quick 10 to 15 seconds, because this does come up a lot, and I think it's worth it. When you're talking about the candidate feedback overall, a lot of organizations stumble with or get hung up with the legal department and what they can and can't say when it comes to feedback. Do you guys have any, quick hit ideas or thoughts around maybe it's training that you've done with your recruiters on how to give negative feedback without it being a legal conundrum?
Well,
so I may actually I was going to say I may default to Lisa on this because we are one of those organizations that provides very general feedback. We do not get into the specifics due to those legal reasons.
Fine, well, I'm happy to a few comments. The first thing is that I think this depends on where you are in the world, and I think there's geographical legal requirements that make this tricky in some areas. I think the key is to stay away from behaviour and talk about factual, and I talked earlier about being really, really clear about giving brave feedback, so being able to say no really comfortably, but making sure it is connected to the job, and that will, if the more it is connected to the ability to do a job, then it will stay away from the personal, but it's certainly a minefield. I'll accept that.
Well, and thank you for that, because that's valuable nugget right there. So hopefully that will help that person in their conversations and thoughts as well. And I want to thank you both as I hand it back over to Amy to close us out. Really appreciate your time and attention.
Yeah, thank you so much to everyone who has attended to listen in and pose any questions. If there were questions that came through that didn't get answered, we'll do our best to respond to the doing. There is a lot that we're doing along the lines of all reach out to us at avature.net. So thank you so much to everybody who joined, and to our wonderful panelists, and to Elaine for leading this discussion, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.